thanks again. I'm going to talk about creative optimization, but actually I'm going to talk more specifically about self-optimizing playable ads. Or as one of our partners said, this is the greatest creative innovation since video ads were introduced. So basically, I wanted to start relatively basic, talking about why creative optimization is important. So just a little bit briefly about, so basically talking about quick intro, value IPM improvement, which is creative optimization, and self-optimizing case studies basically. So really quickly about us, we have done self-optimizing playable ads since last year. We've been around doing playables for like 5-6 years. We worked on this technology for 2 years, but we launched self-optimizing playable ads last year. Yeah, we're all marketing veterans. We've come from Amsterdam, 20+ people. Lastly, we are network and investor independent, which means we don't answer to anyone. We don't optimize for specific networks. We optimize for anything. And just short on me, I've been in this industry for quite a while. I worked in playables for the last 5 years or so. So, to the interesting part though, so IPM, or install per mil, which is basically a measure on how effective your creatives are. So install per mil means installs per 1,000 impressions. This is extremely important actually for any kind of advertising. It's also an area that's quite often overlooked, because as an advertiser you can target, obviously you work on performance in terms of targeting. You target the right users. You work with CPI optimization, so you don't pay too much for the users that you get. But the performance of your creative is actually what determines how many installs you get from the impressions that you get delivered, right? So a couple of really basic key formulas here, just want to start with. The first one describes CPM equals CPI times IPM. So CPM being, of course, then the cost per mil, so cost per 1,000 impressions, and that's how you compete in networks. So you can influence this by the bid, CPI, and the performance of the creatives. And the better you compete within the network, the higher CPM, the more impressions you get, right? It's basically how you compete in the auctions that the networks have. The second one, very basic, but I want to add it anyway because we get back to it later. The number of installs you get is the IPM times the number of impressions that you have, minus 1,000. And then lastly, ROAS, or return on advertising spend, is the revenue you generate divided by the cost for an install, right? Again, the reason I mention these things, very basic, is that I want to show really how important IPM optimization is. So I'm going to keep moving to some really basic stuff. As you can see, IPM and CPM are linearly dependent. So if CPI is the same, you increase your IPM by 50%, your CPM increased by 50%, right? Next one, same goes with impressions. So if you keep the IPM constant, number of impressions goes up, installs go up by as much. Third, if your impressions are constant, then you increase your IPM, the number of installs go up, right? I have a point with this, by the way, just bear with me. So, the second last of these graphs I want to show is basically how competition within a network works. And this is very simplified. But in essence, as your CPM, which is the number you compete on, if it's 0, obviously you get 0 impressions. But as it increases, you win more and more auctions, right? You get more and more impressions. And at some point you reach, some point of CPM, you reach a point where you start winning a lot of auctions, which means your impression count shoots off, right? This is, considering, or imagine they have an unlimited budget also. But basically it shoots up, right? So all of a sudden you're getting a ton of impressions for the same, for the same bid. And you start winning a lot of auctions, and then after a while it starts flattening out a bit as you win more and more, and at the end you can't win any more auctions, right? So you get as many impressions as you can. Now, let's say that we, instead of looking at CPM here, we would look at, instead of impressions, we look at installs. The CPM, so the number of installs is equally, it has equally effect from CPM as impressions did, if the IPM is constant. But this is think this is, considering the IPM is held constant as well. Now imagine if you have an IPM increasing, right? You have this dynamic, and your IPM is increasing significantly. Basically, you're going to move to this kind of scenario where, where not only are you getting an uptake in CPM because IPM is going up, but you also get a shitload of more installs on the same impressions because your IPM is going up. So optimizing IPM, this is basically my point here, is that optimizing IPM will give you a double whammy, basically. It will make you a lot more competitive in the network, and for those, so you get more impressions, and for those impressions you get a lot more installs. So basically, the opportunity you have of getting installs by focusing on IPM optimization is immense, basically. So now, what we discovered though is that not many companies focus as much on IPM optimization as they should. Now, this is a quote that we got from BitMango when I was working at Chartboost, and we led a project here where we optimized BitMango's creatives, or playable ads. We did this for a while. We got great results. We had this quote. We posted on our website. We're very proud and all that stuff, right? And we increased the conversion rate of their ad by 40%, which is IPM basically, which, great. They saved a ton of money from this. They will get a lot more installed and saved a ton of money. So you would think then that, okay, this is the kind of results you can get by being, structured, looking at data and working with it. It's relatively easy. You don't have to be rocket science to do this, scientists to do this, but then the question is more, okay, why are not more people doing this then? And why are companies not focusing a lot on this? And the main reason for that is, well, for us, this required 5 people working for 4 months, basically, to reach this. And yeah, granted, it didn't work full time, but it still took 4 months to do this, or 5 people's attention. So, yeah, we got great results, but we can't do this at large scale, right? We didn't have the resources for that, all the time for that matter. So the main reason why IPM optimization is not done too much is basically it's labor intensive and it takes time. So, and here's my point in the whole presentation basically. What's the solution to this IPM optimization? It has immense value, but it's not done today. The solution to this is self-optimizing ads. Imagine you have an ad that basically does all this work for you. It optimizes itself in real time. You don't have to do anything, basically. You don't have to change any assets, you don't change any variables, you don't have to change any targeting, anything. You just let it run, and it just automatically adopts itself to the user. And this is basically what we have developed. And this is what we launched in November last year. And we are, well, we're obviously very happy with it, but basically the main reason for this is that it's extremely fast, requires 0 effort. It's all data-driven, because we measure everything inside and outside of the ad, and then the ad itself acts on this. And then it has enormous impact, and I'll show you in a second. So 2 case studies we did. One was the #1 game in the App Store, where we took their playable ad, we integrated our technology, and we did 15 iterations, or the ad itself did 15 iterations of itself, basically, within a week. And the example I showed before, where we had a 40% increase for BitMango in performance, we did that for 4 months, right? Whereas we did, and that was 4 iterations. Now we did 15 iterations in 1 week. And we doubled the CTR and had almost the same impact on IPM, actually. So we had a lot higher impact in significantly lower time. And now they run basically 25% of all their downloads now comes through this specific ad only. And another hyper-casual test we did as well, we had similar kind of results, right? We did 10 iterations in 4 days, and we doubled the IPM from 25 to 50. And this required 0 human interaction at all. This was the ad itself, optimizing itself, basically. Then we had, I included 2 more case studies here. We had Adult Frontier, also from Congregate. This was a 2-stage process. They had a very low-performing playable ad that they started out with, that we fixed. And then we took it to the kind of the next level with the optimization. So we went from 13% to 53% CTR. And now, the IPM now of this ad unit is significantly better than anything else they have. We also ran one for Ilion, where we That's a typo, actually. Sorry about that. We had a significant increase in CTR. The first one, actually, the idle frontier is supposed to go from 1 to 5 in CTR. But anyway, the last one from 13 to 53%, and we more than double the IPM, basically. So I think we ran this again since November. We've done a few. I think we've done 25 different ads so far. These are just 4 examples. But what's nice about this technology is it's kind of fail-proof, because it takes care of everything itself. It looks only at data, and it works extremely fast. That's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Yes, over there. Sorry, I'll run over and give you my mic.
Hi. I just wondered, so is the self-optimizing tool, is that a service that you're offering? What actually is it?
Yes, exactly.
It is.
So it is a service we're offering. It's a technology we've been developing for a couple of years that we released in November. So in essence, it's kind of like an SDK that you integrate in the ad. And then we run all the optimizations through our technology. So that is the product Playable Platform offer, basically.
Yeah. And have you got your details to put up on the screen for us? Or?
Thank you. Great question.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? I have one, but oh, no, yep, please.
Just briefly, do you have some examples of what you mean by optimizing the ad itself? I mean, at a high level.
Sure. An example is that if one of the so you saw that some of the ads were several iterations, right? One of those iterations could have been you test, for instance, the end card. So we would test, let's say 5 different end cards, and we see which one has the best performance. Another one can be that in the congregate example, they have a cart that goes through the ad, basically. We tested cart speeds. So the original speed was 5, and we tested, 1, 3, 5, 8, 7, 10, 20, all those against each other. And then we saw when we had enough data to be statistically significant at 95% level, then we stopped the test, basically, or the ad stopped the test itself, and then evaluated, okay, which one is performing the best. And then it kept going with that value. So then it would always be, so cart speed, I think 15 won. So then it would always continue with cart speed 15, and then we'll test something else.
Anybody else? Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Aaron. Does this compare ads? Like, I'm going to have 3 ads for the same campaign. Does it compare them? Which one is the best? Like, I have a video of 15 seconds, a video of 25 seconds, and a video of 30. If I want to choose which one is the best, does it jump from one to another?
This is more about the ads. So that's on a higher level, actually. This is more about, this would optimize each unique ad unit, basically. So it would, let's say, if you have 3 different ads, and they would perform, let's say, at an IPM of 5, 6, and 8, or something like that. This technology would make them perform at, like, say, 7, and 10, and 15. So it doesn't compare. It compares itself to a previous state. So it gradually always improves itself. So it's not an A/B test between different ads. It's more about a constant evolvement of your current ads that you have.
Anything else? We have a lot of time for questions, so if you've got anything at all. I've got a question. It's probably really dumb.
I doubt it.
I've always interested in playable ads because they're like these little bite-sized games and kind of stuff. I mean, it's like, from your perspective, what kind of those ads, what kind of genres of playable ads usually work for developers? I know that's quite a broad topic rather than yourself.
No, it's a great question. Great question. I mean, in generally speaking, when you can mimic the gameplay, that's when it works the best. So, hyper casual is good, idle is good, slots is good. When it comes to match 3, for instance, gameplay usually doesn't really work. So then you want to test with other type of like mini games, like let's say memory. You would use the game assets, but you would use a memory game instead, which actually could work really well. So it's in general, the more straightforward the gameplay is, the better it works. But it works for any game genre, I would say. It's just that in some game genres like match 3, you need to be a lot more creative, though.
So we're not going to see a full-on multiplayer shooter in a playable ad anytime soon.
That would actually be a really cool project. Maybe.
That'd be great. That'd be awesome.
20 minutes.
Do we have any more questions? Anyone? Yes.
Fun-filled.
Hi, I'm Lisa from CP Playable. We kind of know each other. I didn't get why you're saying that match 3 playables don't really work, because we are working with Small Giant and match 3 is successful so far. So what's your argument for that? What do you mean playables don't work with match 3?
And then a couple of minutes for us.
So after the 15 minutes goes, and I've got a couple of minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, that's right.
My time is
yeah, 2 or 3 minutes, and then
okay.
we have a couple.
Well, I mean that's the experience we have. I mean it's you know it's and working is relative, right? I mean is 5 IPM okay,
Yes,
or
is
it not acceptable? It was 10 better. But what we've seen though is that for match 3 though, when you do something adjacent to it, some different type of gameplay, but using the assets, we usually have much better performance. So.
Can you take 20 gigs? 20 gigs? That's the actual size. I can make it larger.
Yeah, hi Johan.
I'll make it smaller.
I think you said you change the settings, the machine changes the settings, and then you use machine learning to work out what's the best settings. But how do you choose the settings? Is it randomly or is it intelligently?
That's a mix between machine and humans in the beginning when we set up the test. Then we choose a lot of things that we want to test. And then we let the machine kind of decide the priority of those tests. But the nice thing is that considering it's automatic and it's machine-based, we can test a ton of different settings, right? We can do, let's say, 50 different tests at the same time. We test, let's say, card speed, and then maybe end card combination and color and those things. But it's a combination basically of human and machine, and a lot of that is done up front. So once it's done up front, it can just run for a very long time.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause for Johan, please? Thank you.